Oh boy. So, I think I got everything figured out with the microphone here. So, I am just doing a pretty casual playthrough of fighting EX Lair here. I guess to start off is just, this is a game made by a company called Arika, and a lot of the people, and this is going to be like, I'm just going to go off the top of my head with what I know. I could look up something, but I'd rather just go off of my memory. Arika is made up of a bunch of members that used to work at like Capcom. And I believe primarily Capcom. I don't think like they're a hodgepodge of people who used to work at like Capcom and SNK and all that. I think it's just ex-Capcom employees. And it's founded by Akira Nishitani. Hopefully I didn't just butcher his name, but it's Nishitani. Or Nishitani. I don't even think you pronounced the I in the middle, but basically, I think he did a lot of work on, I think Street Fighter 2 was like his big thing. I know he worked on Street Fighter 1, but he was a main designer, I believe, on Street Fighter 2. And then, I think sometime after the production of Street Fighter 2 was over, I don't know if he helped make the subsequent versions, like Super Turbo and all that, but after Street Fighter 2, he, I think, went on to found Arika, which, funnily enough, is his name backwards. I thought that was kind of cute. Since then, he's led the company into doing like I think fairly noticeable, good work. Nothing gigantic, but I know they're responsible for making arguably one of the best versions of Tetris out there. I think it's called Tetris Grandmaster. But all in all, they basically, you could call them like little indie freelancers in terms of what work they did. They would help develop things for other companies that they get signed on to do work with. When it comes to this game specifically, though, this was a game that they were going to have on the 3DS. And going even farther back than that, this game uses characters that Arika had created themselves that were in another game called Street Fighter EX. And Street Fighter EX was in, I believe, arcades and then PlayStation 1. Then Street Fighter EX2 was arcades and PlayStation 1 as well. And then Street Fighter EX3 was on PS2. And then those were all games that basically Capcom had Arika make, using the Street Fighter characters mixed with their personally owned, created intellectual property characters. They were made to be maybe somewhat of an antithesis to some of the characters in there. I think Akira had used his knowledge of some of what made the characters what they were in Street Fighter, and used other templates that were maybe molded around during the development of 2 and made them fully fleshed out characters with, more inspiration. So you have, like, this guy, Alan. His name's Alan Snyder, and his entire thing is just being Chuck Norris. Like, his big inspiration is Chuck Norris from the movie Way of the Dragon. His specific look in there, where he had that kind of hair and the mutton chops or the sideburns and whatnot, and he's basically supposed to just be a big Chuck Norris inspired character. But beyond that, you just have a lot of, I love how the characters look in here. They have the right, like, some of them obviously you have someone more simple like Kairi, Kyrie's supposed to be one of the main characters of the background story of this world. So he's a bit simpler, but I think when it comes to the simple characters, then you go to someone more complicated like Sharon or Rosso. They all look like they still inhabit the same world, and they have a very good congruent sense of style to them. Whoever did the illustrations, good on you. Like this is awesome. And all I'd really have to say is just I'm glad this exists. This game specifically, if no one has known yet, but it was an April Fool's joke. Arika had put out a small little slice of gameplay. I think April 1st, 2018, and from then on, they were like, oh, we kind of just put this out as a bit of an April Fool's joke. There is some contention that they didn't actually put it out as an April Fool's joke. They just kind of said that, but I believe they actually weren't really planning to do much with that. But they have received such massive positive feedback from just the general fighting game community and general public that they're like, oh, well, maybe we should actually capitalize on this hype and interest and do something with this, and they did. So I'll just go through the character roster here, starting from the, I'll do here. So you got Sharon, you got Volcano Rosso, you got Shadowgeist, Darun Meister, or Darun Mister, I think is his name actually. Jack, Garuda, Sanane, Kairi, Hokuto, Hayate, Shirase, Blair, Doctrine Dark, Skullomania, Alan, Area, Pullum, and the main man and only guest character in this game, Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury, which is developed by SNK. They did a little bit of a collaboration with them where Terry showed up in this game, and then in SNK's I think it's called SNK Heroines. It was on Switch and PS4 and whatnot. Skullomania showed up in there as a chick, so gender bent, but she was in there, or he was in there as a heroine. So I kind of like that. As small as this company is, they did a collaboration with them. That's a thing of goodwill. It's just a cool thing to do. I definitely didn't expect when they actually announced that Terry was in here. I was like, oh, are you serious? Huh. So, yeah, I'm just gonna go through Arcade, go through it. Well, if I don't want to get my ass kicked, I'll play Shadowgeist. I played him the most, so let's go with Shadowgeist. So, one of the things that they wanted to add in here that didn't compromise the traditional feel of like a 90s era fighter, but they wanted there to be some sort of modern kind of quality of life improvement to the system, something that kind of was a their own thing that they could add, their little gimmick, their thing that kind of set this apart from other fighters, something that made it more accessible, gave a lot of choice, but it wasn't detrimental to the overall experience of the game. It didn't like water it down, potentially. They added this system called the Gogi system, and you go through these different decks, and each of these are basically, I guess you could say, different isms, like Street Fighter Alpha used to have, where you have the A-ism and the X-ism and the V-ism, and they basically allow you to, like, kind of get little buffs here and there based upon actions you take in the game. For instance, if you want to know what does what, you can press triangle on one. So it shows right there, it says trigger for the heads or tails. Each of them has about 5 different things. Some of them will have like a couple of the orange ones, which are the more active ones, while the blue ones are kind of more passive. It's kind of a neat system. Basically, from the community that I've been, been a part of, or ones that I've read opinions about the Gogi system, is some people do like it, some people don't. Some people think that it would just be much better if they had a more centralized system of mechanic. So each of the Gogi decks kind of has a mechanic in it that Arika has had in their previous games. It would be much simpler, they said, if they just went to something like that instead of one you could switch between. I think having them be able to be switched between is fine, because again, it presents something more like an ism that you can pick between, or the grooves from Capcom vs. SNK. It's a little bit of customizability, and it allows people to kind of have a focus on what type of playstyle they want. Coupled with the playstyle of the character, you can really mix and match. You can really, like, you can really experiment with these systems in here and with what the characters can do and what these things allow you to do. So one here is like, this is called M gross. I don't know what the M stands for, but I think it's like meter gross. So perform 2 reversals. The effect you get is you gain meter when you perform reversals. So that's it. Attack 5 reversals. Reversals gain a damage boost. So I'm guessing that's power reversal. So that's if you punish or attack the reversal of the enemy you're fighting 5 times, you get that effect. Super cancel from a super combo 2 times, and that's a thing that that Arika's games have had in them, is the ability to cancel from one super into another if you have the meter. The only other fighting games that I know that you can do that is like King of Fighters. And King of Fighters, I hadn't had that for too long, but Arika's always had it, I believe, even from their first one, their Street Fighter EX. And they actually do have another game that was in arcades only that I believe Bando helped publish. And that was Fighting Lair, not Fighting EX Lair, but just regular old Fighting Lair. That has specific characters that only show up in that game, and a lot of people who play this one are hoping that the Fighting Lair characters will hopefully one day show up in this one, and I really do hope they show up in this one. That game has a lot of interesting history around it. And there's a forum online that kind of goes to the whole design philosophy of that game, and I would put a link in the description of where you can go see that forum, but I don't have access to a computer. I'm doing this off my PS4, so but yeah, I'm okay with the Gogi system, to be honest. I think they've covered a lot of bases on what people would potentially play like, and they've condensed it into these like styles. If you wanted something super fucking basic, you could go with aggro. That's the first one. So this one is kind of your kind of basic, easy. You don't even really generally have to think about what you're doing when activating these. So, yeah, I really like this system that they have implemented. I really don't think they need to add any more Gogi decks. I think they've covered all bases. And then they have another thing that kind of helps new or older players. So classic command type is traditional quarter circle, half circle, 360 motions. Progressive is, I would say, single press, single direction motions. So instead of doing the classic Shoryuken motion, the uppercut motion that Ryu would do from Street Fighter, instead of doing forward, down, forward, in here it would be something like down, forward. So 2 diagonal down forwards pressed simultaneously and then punch, and then he'll do it. So they tried to get rid of complicated motions, and it's an option. You know, I've never used it. I couldn't. Playing progressive is actually hard for me because I'm so used to classic traditional motions. But hey, it's cool if you want that option. Better to have put it in as an option than to put it in as the base gameplay mechanic and not have it be able, not have it to be able to be switched. And then colors and blah blah blah. So going in. But basically with this game, really, for what it is, it's obviously nothing in terms of like bigger budget fighting games like Mortal Kombat 11 or Injustice 2 or even Street Fighter 5. But even with their budget, they really were able to do a lot. Like I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is a pretty game. This was made by like a very small team, and they managed to get it looking like this. Like if you have a 4K TV and a PS4 Pro, this game it makes a difference. The effects on the clothing, the lighting, the metal parts looking metal. I don't know how else to put it. It's just a pretty to look at game. Now, one thing about the speed of it is, or not the speed, but the animation is good. It's smoother in areas than I would ever expect it to be again for the budget of this game. But there is some 90s jank. As there's another YouTuber called Maximilian Dude, someone who will be, I'll say it now, a lot more popular and well known than I would ever hope to be, and I always wish him success. I watch pretty much everything he does. But he played these games and he described it as there's some 90s jank in here, and you can only really tell with like their animations, not in how the game feels. The game feels quick and fast and responsive, as it should. These are coming from people who know fighting games. But in terms of like the actual quality of animations, there's not like a lot of over extravagant animations. Like, a lot of the animations are doing what they're supposed to do for the purpose of what they're supposed to do. So, for instance, when I do a sweeping heavy kick like this here, if I were in, like, let's say Street Fighter 5, I don't have a video for comparison or anything like that, but there's an animation that Ryu does where he like puts his whole like weight into his kick, and there's a unique blocking animation for if it's blocked. There's not all that in here because that's resource intensive. They don't have that manpower or resources or the capability to do that. So it's more about the old mentality of doing more with less. You know, the old less is more mentality, which I've always respected the hell out of that mentality. That mentality is where you get things like the fog and the fog effects that came to be in Silent Hill. Sorry, I was blanking on the name of the game, but Silent Hill. So with Silent Hill, when they were thinking of a way to cover up the pop-in that would happen for the low draw distances in the game, they, in production, thought up the fog. So the fog would cover up what was in front of the player as it was loading in the assets, but it would do it behind the fog. So what they had initially created it for, which was to do that, they worked it into the narrative and the overall atmosphere of the game. You know, the iconic fog in Silent Hill, the thing that hides all the horrors. It distorts your sense of direction. It, you know, like it's an iconic staple in the Silent Hill franchise, and that was something that they had used mainly as a workaround for the pop-in for the game. They did less. They did more with less. Less is more. You know, they didn't have a lot, but they were able to do a lot with what they had. Same thing with this game. They have Unreal Engine 4. They have, you know, pretty much their assets and whatnot that they've had from previous games. They basically redid animations, cleaned them up, obviously redid the character models and made new stages, and this game, it definitely shows. I can feel the effort when I'm playing this. And I'm not here to just, you know, shit on Street Fighter V. There are things about that game I do like overall, but with Street Fighter V, I just want some of the charm that Capcom used to have that I think has gone because they've done things like focus more on esports and the esports like scene. I think they've become just more direct and cynical in their approach about content, even though there are some things that they've added in like arcade edition and whatnot that are cool, like the themed arcade modes and the music and the stages. I'm not saying there's no effort being put in, I'm just like the what is it saying? Street Fighter V for Capcom actually wasn't a very expensive game for them. They made it relatively cheap on their end. Mainly because they know Street Fighter is always gonna do pretty well, but they didn't want to put a shit ton of money into it. Nowhere near as much as like MK11. So with Street Fighter V, the main thing that kind of disappoints me, as well as I believe Max, from what I've heard in plenty of his videos, and he has a pretty good video on stop nerfing fighting games or something like that, is Street Fighter V in beta was something that allowed for much more player creativity and something that felt a bit more open in terms of its comboing potential, what you could do with characters. And subsequently, as betas went on, as newer betas kept coming out, people started reporting that more and more were starting to be taken out of characters' kits, and they felt like they could do less and less, and then you end up getting what Street Fighter V is at launch, and they just kind of feel like it just feels like I'm playing as a character that I used to play in previous Street Fighters, but they can do so much less. The game is slowed down. They wanted people to focus more on footsies and neutral in the game. And it just feels really like everything feels like a calculated thing that Capcom wants, you know. And I get why. They wanted to blur the line between new players and old players, so they took out a lot of things in their system that they thought would be daunting to new players. But I would think that if I saw all the options and choice that they were going to allow you to do, and I saw other players being able to do that, if anything, if I wanted to truly be better at the game, I would put in the time and effort so that I can do those things. So it would only excite me more that there's more options and things to look forward to as I heighten myself as a fighting game player in terms of my skill and ability. But Capcom thinks the opposite in this regard. They think that, oh man, you don't want too much options. You don't want too much choice. That will scare newcomers away. You know, that'll frighten newer players. They're like, oh man, there's too much stuff here to think it. Here's the thing. No. First and foremost, if you wanted to grasp newer people, if you wanted to throw your line into the river or the ocean that is the casual market, adding a crap ton of choice and options and unique things like that will entice newer people. It'll entice them to be like, oh, what is this? You can't tell me that with KOF 14, another game I really, really respect, you can't tell me that when I'm playing KOF 14 and I'm doing like a match against the computer, I'm doing a match online, and I have a friend that is a passerby and they take a peek at what I'm playing and they see that character selection screen and they're like, dude, how many fighters are in this game? And I'm like, oh, you know, base 50 on launch. And you're like, wait, 50 characters on launch? Yeah. And then there's subsequently been like 8 or 9 that have been added since then. Plus a good amount of stages, music is good, and the game is very, very fun to play. Another game that, in lieu of being a modern representation of a long-standing franchise, it stays somewhat traditional. It does have things in there that are meant to be a bit more accommodating towards newer people, but I don't think they really compromise the overall KOF DNA and experience. How you engage, your mobility, the neutral, the footsies, the air footsies, the air-to-airs, all the things that makes KOF is still there. Obviously, there's a little bit lacking in terms of the art direction and the graphical fidelity of the game. I think the overall art direction's okay. I think the graphical fidelity is the main thing that's missing, although I will say that some characters definitely do look better than others, even after the visual update in 14, which I appreciate. It's nothing that's ungodly bad, but it's even if you love the game like I do, you do have to note that the game's lacking in that regard. But SNK definitely learns from game to game. You can see that in the new Samurai Showdown. Like, their art direction and their graphical fidelity and their sense of it is just getting crazier and crazier. Look at this game. This game was made for a fraction of the budget that bigger budget games probably spend on fighting games. What this game looks like. Look at this background. Look at how the game runs. This looks like some background from Neo. So, I don't think it's any excuse. I don't really think it's always about pumping as much money as you can into a project to make it worthwhile. I think it's how you use that money, how you allocate that money, how smart you are with your resources. I don't have to have a $10 million budget to be put into a fighting game to make it good. Also, that doesn't guarantee success. I think you have to have a good fighting game engine first and foremost, how it feels, what the game feels like to play. Then you have to have, obviously, good theming, good art direction, and just a dedicated team of people, knowing what they are doing. You know, get some people who have been in the game a while. And just put all that in a pot and see what comes to boil, I guess. I don't know a saying, but with this, I can definitely feel that. And this is made by a team of people that I've seen their interviews. It looks like maybe 15 people work at that building. So don't even. Don't sit there and tell me that, oh man, you need a gigantic budget. It's like, no, you don't. I admit more money would help these people with this game, but it would make their already good thing better. You know, they've already shown that they can do something like this with such a small budget. Think of what they could do with a bigger budget. And they've already shown me that they're dedicated to making a fun product. My worries of, if they're going to get more money, they could just go in a completely different direction with it because they'll get overzealous. I don't think that'll happen with these guys. I don't think that. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt just because of what I've seen for the past few years in terms of what they've done with this. I mean, look at this. Look at the stage. This looks like a stage again, it's like from Neo or something. Like, this is crazy. I'm sorry, I'm just having too much fun, actually. I gotta do the Raging Demon for you guys. There we go. And it just gets me where someone wants to say, oh, you need a shit ton of money and something to even make it worthwhile. It's like, no, you don't. This would technically be considered indie. I mean, of course, the production, the amount of money, the team that made it, the company isn't that big. It's definitely indie. The only thing I really hope for this game is, over the course of its production, over the course of its production, it's added characters for free. The only character that you really had to pay for was Terry. It was a very smart move. So what they initially did when this game came out is it came out in 2 versions. And they were very forthcoming, even though it wasn't completely obvious, because they didn't say it anywhere in like a commercial or anything, but it was mainly on their Facebook or on their YouTube that if you want to buy the light version, which was $40, this game is definitely worth $40. You get all the starting characters that had come out, The only one that you didn't get was Hokuto. Now, there was a bit of contention around that since Hokuto was a long-standing member of the game franchise in the past. But Shirase was her stand-in the game. Shirase is this character here. Hokuto is like her good version. Shirase is like the evil version. So they were like, you buy the $40 version, you don't get Hokuto, and you don't get all of the Gogi decks. You get like some of them. So that wasn't too bad. The Gogi decks to me aren't super detrimental, but I did want all of them for the sake of having them all and experiencing them all. If you wanted to get everything, for me, when they put this game out, it was less about what I was getting for my money, because I knew this game company had such a small production. It was more about supporting them, because you really are supporting them, like with these purchases. Their entire basis and point of contention of making more for this game or anything more in the future is riding on, I guess, how well this game does. So they had a $60 version. It came with Hokuto, it came with all the Gogi decks, and that's it. So I bought that one, because I'm like, I want you guys to succeed, I'll buy this $60 version. I saw it more as a donation to them. That's how I framed it. Because from any other company doing that, I'd be like, okay, that's kind of, I won't say scummy, but that's kind of a weird business model. But this, I did it. Now, what they ended up doing, which I think is smart, is eliminating that light and standard version nonsense, and they made the entire game. Hokuto, all the Gogi decks, all the colors and all that stuff, they made that $40. From not too long after the game had been out, they did everything's just 40. I'm like, that's a good idea. Now you're like, well, for the people that spent 60, don't you feel kind of screwed? Not entirely, because every add-on character that they put out has been free. And like I said, I had already framed this as, I'm just donating you guys money. So I bought the most expensive version of what they had at the time so that I wanted them to succeed. They're this little underdog company and I want them to succeed. So they made the base version $40. It includes Hokuto, it includes all the Gogi decks, all that. Smart idea, very smart idea. No weird versions difference. And all the Gogi decks just being in the game base without having to buy the rest is much better, because people were going to bring up, don't do what Capcom did with Street Fighter Cross Tekken, where you could buy those gems. Now the Gogi things are nowhere near as bad as the gem system in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. But it is good that they eliminated any sort of comparison with that system in how they did the Gogi deck sales thing. Oh, dang. But I am glad that they ended up just making a universal $40 game. I say very, very, very smart. I know what you're gonna do. And kablam. But beyond all that, the game was doing fine. They kept releasing newer and newer characters for free. The only character you had to pay for, it was Terry, which made sense because he was a cross-promotion character. So that made sense. One thing about this game is just it's really quick. It's really fast. It's really fluid. And one thing I like about it immediately is it feels like a Street Fighter game, but if I just had so many more options in terms of how to engage, how to deal with pressure, my defensive options, my offensive options. You can do things in here that Street Fighter V doesn't allow you to do because, again, they were so concerned with pleasing newer players. So, in Street Fighter V, you can't kill from chip. And here, you can. You know? Another thing, they don't want you to be able to do certain moves like dive kicks and the Tatsumaki Hurricane kick. In Street Fighter V, characters that can do those things cannot do them backwards or neutral anymore. You have to do it while jumping forward. It just seems... Nope, get out of here. Nope, gotcha. I'm gonna shut up, hold on. Yeah, flex. But, it's just weird, some of the things they did in Street Fighter V. Oh, hold on. I was just reading this, and I never took the time to fully read this, so no, it can't be me. My daughter, am I dead? After his meeting with Sharon, the existence of Shadow Geist was killed. Shadow had already died 20 years earlier. Okay, so... Huh. That's one thing about this game they do need to do is they have these little... So when the game was coming out, they had these little blurbs for each character to kind of... It was like a little bio. Those plus these endings really make me want to see more about these characters. Not that there's some big narrative mysteries, just I want to see a fully featured, maybe fully illustrated ending, or maybe there be illustrated cutscenes. Which really wouldn't even take much money. Because here's the thing, Street Fighter 4 did that. Street Fighter, before Ultra Street Fighter 4, or even Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, had the full cutscenes. They had just the illustrated cutscenes that were stills, with voiceovers. They could easily do that in here. They could take whatever illustration artist that they have, maybe even hire one, create these little storyboard comic book looking things like a manga, and then just have the characters talking. And that would... here's another silly thing. I know that in this game, they hired new voice actors for a good amount of the characters. It would give them more work. It would give... Heck, on their YouTube channel, when they were showing off that Sharon was being added, they made a big introduction and big deal on who Sharon's voice actor was. I don't know if that voice actor's like famous or something in Japan, but they actually introduced who she was. She showed off the character Sharon. It was cool what they were doing. Also, Sharon's hot. Just look at her. Let's appreciate this art. I would also like it if they were to put in like a gallery of all the, production art that they did, like concept art. someone did ask me once, how serious do you think Arika is in making this game like a brand, like really going and doing things with this? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where their head's at. I think right now they're just making a fun game and seeing where it goes. I don't know how serious they are about launching like a big like franchise for this game. I think they're just dedicated to making this game fun. All I'm really hoping is before I hear them saying like, hey, we're gonna make like a Fighting EX Layer cartoon or something, I want them to just make sure this game is handled fine. And the only indication I've gotten since they've added area is the president had said in an interview that we should be on the lookout for next April Fools, as he has some big news he's excited to share about the game or their future plans. Seeing as though this is like the main thing they've been working on, this is obviously going to be part of those plans. But I look forward to just seeing what they do. This is a fun, neat, indie title that I definitely wish more people would get into. There's one sad thing about this game. So it's super fun to play. The game, the way you like neutrals and footsies and all that works. The back and forth between the fights, it's all fun. But guess what? The one thing that cripples this game, especially with how small it is the fact that their net play is just not that good. And I can tell you this, I knew that going into it, mainly because when it comes to Japan and fighting games, they do not do rollback netcode. So if I knew that bigger budget Japanese fighting games are having an issue with it, I knew this one was going to have an issue with it. So my biggest grievance right now is probably the fact that finding an online match takes forever. I've definitely made it my mission to send a friend request to anyone I do connect with that has a decent connection. And most of them just instantaneously accept. So they probably know it's like, oh god, somebody I can play with, and it doesn't feel like I'm playing on Nicaraguan underground internet. Let me accept this friend request so we can play on a regular basis. But yes. One thing I also do like that they added in an update, it was early on, they added the ability to switch between the original, kind of Street Fighter EX music. So it's music from all the Street Fighter EX games and Fighting Layer, which is this extra theme. But you can also go to the music that they made personally for this game. And their music is really good, but I do like the kind of new... The new kind of, I wouldn't call them remixes, but they're like updated, remastered versions of old songs with better sound quality. I did like that they added that. But yeah, the last time they updated this game was in beginning of September. So, we got the president here talking in an interview that we have something to look forward to next April Fools. So, what, quarter one, or would that technically be beginning of quarter two for 2020? I'm looking forward to whatever he says. I hope it's something substantial. I really do. Because I'll definitely, even when newer, bigger fighting games comes out, I'll always be paying attention to this. It's always something I can just pick up, play, and go back to, and I always feel excited when I pick this up and play it. I yearn for more people to play this with. If anyone sees this video, hit me up. I'll pick this game up. it goes on sale, but for 40 bucks, this is worth it. If anything, look at this as just a really big-ass proof of concept. I think they've proved themselves. I think they do. They do deserve that $40. And would I say this game was worth $60 at launch? It's steep. It's hard to justify the $60 that I paid, but the way I justify it to me is it was less about the content I was getting and more about I want to give them as much money as I can, respectfully so, within my budget, so that they are successful and I want to see something come out of it. And I did. They made improvements to the game. They kept adding characters for free, even though for me, I wanted them to make them. I wanted them to make the game, the characters paid, but they made them free. I actually have 100% at this game as well. I platinumed it, and I actually did manage to do a lot of the online ones. So, woo. But yeah, that's my little blurb about this. I'll probably do something that's a little bit more direction, with a bit more direction to it in terms of what I say and what topics I'm going over. But yeah, that was a quick run through of Arcade. You have your mission mode. It's basically a series of combo trials. Some of them are really cool, where they're like, some of them are pretty 90s. And I say that in, you may have, for instance, let's go to Blair's last trial. Her very last one, I believe. Yes. With everything that you know about the character, the game wants you to experiment. Part of what the game designers used to do in fighting games, I'm not saying it's technically a good or bad thing, but one thing they used to do is make it so that learning something in a fighting game, learning how to play, was part of the experience. You know, so in here, after I did all the combos with Blair, it says perform a 25-hit combo, and it's harder than you think. You know, it says take everything that you know. You get 3 bars. I don't. Okay, it does come back, but you take everything you know about the character. And I don't know what I'm doing. Take everything you know about the character and try to just craft a 25-hit combo on your own. One of them was one of them for Kairi was stay in the air for like 30 seconds. Another one is that will just throw at you is another one with Kairi was do 300 points of damage. So you gotta think of how to craft a combo that does that. It doesn't tell you, it just says do this. Experiment, think outside the box, be imaginative. And I was like, oh, it's cool. And actually, I can't pull it off now on the spot. I'm nervous. But I actually did craft a pretty cool 25-hit combo with Blair. Here's another cool thing, too, is the 25-hit combo that I made, right? The 25-hit combo that I made is completely different from the 25-hit combo that someone else did. There's actually a good amount of examples. There's enough variation on that. You know? There are some that kind of took a shortcut. There are some that got to, like the ones that say do this much damage. There are some that got to that much damage in a lot less hits than I did because they chained more heavies together. They probably did like raw jumping fierce punch into crouching fierce punch into some sort of other thing, and you know, they didn't do like that. Oh, I thought that would work. Yeah, that's just fun to do. But they obviously, you know, and that's what I'm talking about. They don't have the polish of like a bigger budget team, but look at these characters. They look good. One thing I like that Max had said in his video is that they went for these characters almost look like they're action figures to look, and that works for this game. Like, it really does. You know, despite the fact that Street Fighter V is definitely the game with more production value in it, I prefer a look like this. I really do. I prefer a look like this. Or I prefer KOF 14 for all of its charming character it has in each and every one of its characters. Those characters move better to me. And not just in terms of, like, the movement in KOF compared to Street Fighter. I mean, the animations I like in that game. I like that they tried to capture all the personality and whatnot of that those characters had going from 2D to 3D. So Street Fighter V has the raw production value, don't get me wrong, but I think they squandered their talent. I think they didn't allocate their resources in the best way possible. And first and foremost, I just think their game became extremely limited from the beta all the way up to what eventually released on day one. There's some footage too, you can go watch, where it shows beta footage between Ryu and Chun-Li of what they were going to be able to do. I know this seems crazy, but before, you could do the critical art for Chun-Li, and then you could combo after it. I know, right? No. All critical arts in Street Fighter V are just... All critical arts in Street Fighter V are big knockdown flashy moves that you can't do anything after. This game doesn't have really when the bar's full you get a super. The only character who does have something like that is Terry. And that's another thing I was hoping they would do, because they did used to have level 3s, but look at this. A super like that, I can't do anything after. But I could go something like that. Also, I do like the fact that this game gets like run canceling a lot better. So right here, if you wanted to connect an attack, you could do jumping fierce and then buffer in run. So after the fierce hit connects, you buffer in forward so that you're running, so the enemy's still caught in their the hit stun from the fierce, but then you can connect the hit after and keep running. It's really cool. Well, thanks for listening to me blather on. I'm going to probably have a much better video with this topic coming up later, I just was kind of doing this as a test run. But I will catch whoever is listening out there later in video game land. So see you later.